Hello, and welcome back for another issue of Bubblespeech, a podcast on the histories of our favorite comic book characters. If you're just tuning in for our $1 million debut, I'm Lyric Hartwell, a literary critic and lifelong fan of DC Comics.
And I'm Margot Kix, pretty much a DC novice.
We're starting our first run of issues with my personal favorite superhero, Batgirl. In the previous issue, we took a look at some of the history and context surrounding the introduction of the original Batgirl, Betty Kane, and also read her first and last appearances in comics. Margot, could you care to take us through those wonderful little stories?
So, in the last episode, we've met Batgirl, the first one, the niece of Batwoman, the original Batwoman, not the one most people would think of. She was introduced in a thrilling issue where Batman and Robin fight against the Blue Bowman, a famous villain of the Batman canon. Took a look at that. We took a look at why Batgirl and Batwoman, for that matter, exist. A little bit about Mr. Frederick Wolfen and his book Seduction of the Innocent, and how that had a great negative impact on comics in general because it was basically a call for censorship that was attended by comic publishers in the form of the Code of Authority. And now we are here to discuss the actual Batgirl, or the Batgirl that most people would associate with the title, Barbara Gordon.
Yeah. Um, so the original Batgirl, Betty Kane, was not super well loved. We looked at those stories and they weren't anything special, I would say. There's some charm in just the charm inherent to the Silver Age of comics, the silliness of it all. But all she really does in the first one is get kidnapped. Um, and she's really just there as like almost like how Robin is to Batman, Batgirl is to Robin, of like she's the sidekick's sidekick. Some context on DC Comics in the 60s. Batman sales were really starting to lag. There's been some reporting that suggests that DC may have been considering canceling Batman at around 1963. And while the sales were bad, they weren't quite that bad. Taking a look at what other Silver Age comics historians have come up with, courtesy of Pat Curley, we have this quote. If you look at DC sales in the early 1960s, while Batman was slipping relative to the Superman books, they were well ahead of most of DC's other comics. In 1962, Batman was reportedly the 10th best-selling comic, with 410,000 copies per issue sold. Batman's circulation was down in 1962 quite substantially from 1961 and 1960, which is a bad trend, and one which probably led to editor Jack Schiff's eventual reassignment. But I have a hard time believing that it could have dropped so low in 1963 that DC was seriously considering canceling the feature rather than doing what they did, which was restaffing the editor's desk. Something that as someone who, yeah, I read a lot of DC comics as a kid, but when I was more as like a teenager in high school, looking into the people who actually made comics, I was more so onto a lot of Image comics. And something that's very different between DC and Marvel and other like indie publishers or just, other publishers in general is the editor isn't just there to like make little story changes or correct, grammar or just fix things up. Like editorial board at DC are essentially the ones driving the overarching tone, stories, themes of the books. So they had like a huge amount of control.
Yeah, for reference, in Marvel, Stan Lee was mainly an editor, a writer too, but mainly an editor for a good while. So, just for reference of how much weight do editors have in Marvel and DC.
Mm-hmm. So under Jack Schiff's editorial kind of control of the Batman comics, they were really starting to lag behind in sales. This is when DC decided to bring Julius Schwartz on board, We talked a little bit about Schwartz in the previous issue, um, but to give you a better idea of who this guy was, he was also a lifelong fan of comics, and when he started working at DC in an editorial capacity, he was working at around the time the Comics Code Authority was going into effect, and DC was having trouble figuring out how to really work around the code. Schwartz was the one who largely revived the Flash, gave us the version of the Flash that we think about as Barry Allen, and was also instrumental in reviving or otherwise like kind of pushing forward the success of characters like Green Lantern, Hawkman, and the Atom. Also, in this time, he created a couple characters, namely Adam Strange, and he oversaw the introduction of the Elongated Man. So he had a pretty positive like history at DC of taking characters that the company didn't really quite know what to do with and making them work in the Silver Age. Uh, in fact, he is oftentimes seen as one of the men who helped like create the Silver Age of comic books as we know it. Uh, what was common in that time, the themes, all of that sort of stuff. Another quote from like people who worked with Julius Schwartz and who like respected him. This specifically from former DC writer and editor Denny O'Neil. Quote, one of the remarkable things about Julie was he was wide open to any suggestions. He'd been doing it one way since the 40s, but he was certainly willing to change with the times, and it was he who came up with the business of changing the characters to fit the times. It seems obvious now, but it wasn't at the time he was doing it. It became one of my main concerns as an editor. Figure out what made the character unique and popular to begin with, and leave that intact and change everything else. Julie first started doing that in 1956. He operated on instinct, and his instincts were damned good. End quote. Um, and I think you can see that not only with Batgirl, but with some of the characters he helped revive, like the Flash, because originally the Flash was Jay Garrick, and the Silver Age Flash was Barry Allen. So the willingness to like keep what made the characters like was core to them and was very popular the same, but then like radically change everything else, was a huge part of both his success as an editor and like what led to DC's success during the Silver Age and
Yeah,
surviving the Comics Code Authority.
and you can definitely call it a huge success because Barry Allen completely overshadowed the original Flash to the point where, like, I think today, if you're not like a huge comics fan or even like comic history fan, you might not even realize that there used to be a proto Flash with Mercury's hat, I guess.
So with Batman, as it was lagging behind in sales in the early 1960s, the thing that Schwartz wanted to do was try and take the series in a little bit more of a serious tone. In large part, this did work. The Batman series came back in sales in a pretty big way. This wasn't just due to Schwartz's influence on the comics, though. In part, it was also because of a very popular television series in 1966,
Ah,
Batman with Adam West and Burt Ward.
yeah,
Uh,
like almost the extreme opposite of the serious tone that Schwartz was trying to go for, you could say.
yeah. How familiar are you with the Batman TV series, Margot?
Uh, God, when okay, so when I was a child, I vaguely remember my dad having a VHS of the show that I may have watched growing up, but I don't remember like a full episode, with the exception with the one that we watched for the recording of this episode. So throughout my whole life, my experience with Batman, the TV show from 1966, is clips from it, be it clips from my memory or clips from Twitter highlighting how, a lot of people seem to hate this show, even though it is hilarious and it wants to be. It's not as in like, haha, you're laughing at it. No, you're laughing with it because it's a very silly take on Batman on purpose. Like you can't tell me that like it is not like you can tell me that that was supposed to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I am going to tell you that it absolutely was intended as a comedy series, but not at the start.
Oh,
Um, ABC had the rights for a Batman TV series for quite a while. There was some kerfuffle with getting that off the ground, and eventually they contacted a man named William Dozier and his company Greenway Productions, and they had the idea of going for a espionage James Bond inspired kind of crime drama. Playing up the uh, Bruce Wayne billionaire socialite and Batman as this dark and edgy kind of thing. But Dozier, who had never read comics before, decided to read a couple Batman comics, and perhaps not really realizing that the tone of the comics had changed over quite a long period of time, he read some Silver Age comics and decided, oh, this is a comedy, and completely decided to change their direction for the series.
which to be fair, I don't know, but the bizarre Batman genie does not ring to me as a serious story that you could see in a Zack Snyder adaptation. So I mean, fair, I would say.
I would actually love to see Zack Snyder's Batman genie.
I would not, because we had enough of Zack Snyder's anti-Islam bullshit, I think. But anyway,
True. Originally, they had tapped an espionage novelist, a guy named Eric Ambler, to write the pilot. When he was informed in the change of genre, he dropped out. He was like, "I did not sign up for this. I'm not prepared for this." But they went forward with the idea of this is camp, this is comedy. We're gonna really ham it up. Um, and it was a huge success. The show had fantastic ratings, with Adam West as Batman and Burt Ward as Robin. Something I found that was very interesting is the ways in which West and Ward tried to capitalize on the popularity of the show. Burt Ward probably gets less recognition than Adam West, even though he has continued to play Robin for such a long time in DC projects. He played Robin in the revival of the 1966 series. Um, his most recent role as Robin was on the TV adaptation of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Um, he was 19 years old when he auditioned for Robin.
I did not expect him to get an actual child to play Robin.
Now, not only did they get a teenager to play a child, they also got a teenager to perform all of his own stunts.
Oh,
Um, the reason being was they were paying him the absolute minimum wage, and if he was to have a stunt double, his stunt double was paid per stunt, whereas he was not because he's not a stunt man.
well, yeah.
So to have him perform his own stunts, they didn't have to pay any extra. Um, this is obviously really shitty. Burt Ward had to go to the emergency room dozens of times, uh,
That sucks.
which
Wow.
does suck.
Of all the elements that Batman 1966 would have kept from the comics, I didn't think that child endangerment would be one.
No, yeah, Burt Ward did some fantastic method acting of being a child soldier by actually having the shit beaten out of him every time he recorded on set.
Yeah, and they, I mean, they are. We watched that episode, and I even commented on that. Like, it's obviously not real punches and kicks, but I was kind of under the impression all this time that this was the kind of show where they would cut right before every hit and then play, the very bright pow or sock card on screen. But no, they go for it. We see people like falling down and being pushed and like swinging on chains and stuff. And it's like, oh no, this is dangerous.
Yeah, especially there are so many smashable props that they use in episodes.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane. But it's the role that largely has defined his career. Um, he's kept with it, and he always got something out of it. Because while the show was on the air, um, he wrote some songs,
Oh.
or rather, he performed some songs. One of which was actually written by Frank Zappa, called "Boy Wonder, I Love You."
Oh.
And he did another single called "Orange Colored Sky." Um, there were two others that have remained unreleased, which is "The Teenage Bill of Rights" and "Autumn Love."
Oh, that's
Um,
so unfortunate, you know. All the talks about lost media. Where is the talk about this lost media, honestly?
Adam West also recorded a novelty song, like in character as Batman. It was called Miranda.
Who's Miranda?
I I don't know,
Well,
but I just find it so funny that apparently this was the thing you did to like capitalize on your success from a TV show was we gotta put out a hit single as Batman and Robin.
I mean that makes sense with like the whole musical industry revolution in the 60s with like from the 50s to the 60s there was this huge jump on the musical industry where a lot of things that we just know as normal were pretty much created. So that kind of makes sense.
So the show was a success, partly because of the child endangerment, partly because of the campy comedy kind of vibe to it. But by season three, some the ratings were kind of falling a bit. So Dozier wanted to introduce another female character. He reached out to Julia Schwartz and the artist working on Detective Comics at the time, Carmen Infantino, uh, to kind of workshop with them the idea of Batgirl. A quote from Carmen Infantino from an interview on Wizard Universe. Batgirl came up in the mid 60s. The Batman TV producer called Julie and said Catwoman was a hit. Could we come up with more female characters? Julie called me and asked that I do that. I came up with Batgirl, Poison Ivy, and one I called the Grey Fox, which Julie didn't like as much. Bob Kane had a Batgirl for about 3 stories in the 50s, but she had nothing to do with a bat. She was like a pesky girl version of Robin. I knew we could do a lot better, so Julie and I came up with the real Batgirl, who was so popular she almost got her own TV show, which is true. They were considering a Batgirl spin-off show, which I'm really sad that that didn't go through.
It's really
Um,
interesting, you know, that they were like, we're gonna create a new Batgirl for this show and the comics simultaneously. Because as we saw in the last episode, original Batgirl would have fit right in with the 1960s show. I could imagine a live action version where she cuts out the little paper bats, which is just a scene that is melted into my brain for the rest of my life now. Great plan.
it's an ingenious plan. Uh, Something that was pretty interesting in my research, though, is while Carmine Infantino, like obviously workshopped the art for Batgirl, and Julia Schwartz was pretty closely involved. William Dozier was the one who had come up with most of the original idea. Um,
Oh.
Quoting Julia Schwartz in his 1986 autobiography, Man of Two Worlds, I asked him what kind of girl he had in mind, and as it turned out, he had already worked out a possible scenario in his head whereby Commissioner Gordon had a daughter who decides to become Batgirl. I think it's really interesting that this like TV producer who previously had no idea about Batgirl was like the one who came up with the idea of specifically Barbara Gordon. The Batman, by the time they were going into season three, ratings were failing. Ratings were falling. They weren't terrible, but they were falling. And this is where Batgirl comes in. And to prepare for this episode, uh, we, both of us, I and Margot, decided to watch the season three premiere of Batman 66
In color.
in color. Very important distinction. Enter Batgirl, exit Penguin. Uh, so Margot, what was walk us through the episode from the perspective of someone new to the whole Batman sphere.
So we open. with an open shot of Gotham City. Uh, and we arrive at the Batcave where Batman and Robin have just returned from a mission, and we see a lot of gadgets, which you said that they envisioned this as like James Bond type thing, and I think you
Mhm.
could still say that, but not in the same way because this was well, James Bond had like his own age of gadgets, but uh, immediately just cements it as very silly. The dialogue is very comic. Like,
Mhm.
they're like, Robin, we need to get to the Bat Cave. Oh, he must be our Bat communicator. And they put Bat as a prefix into everything that they own, and is very fun. And I think that more adaptations should lean into that specifically. That Bruce Wayne loves just naming everything Bat something. Uh, and then we are told that Batman has a date night with at the theaters where Robin is invited, which is kind of awkward. Uh, but he is going to meet Barbara Gordon, the daughter of Commissioner Gordon. Uh, she is she a librarian or is she just in the library? I don't actually
No,
remember.
she's a librarian. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Interesting.
she's a librarian
I
because
mean,
they meant yeah no she's a librarian. I think it's they don't say it, but it's implied that she went to college for like library sciences because they mentioned that her and Bruce were friends before she left for college, and so it's been like she was at college and they haven't seen each other since then.
yes. So, this is this version of Barbara Gordon is about Bruce's age. They which, later they would rewrite that and make Barbara Gordon younger and, sometimes even like a teenager. Uh, but that didn't stop certain people from still shipping the two, which we will get to that eventually, I'm sure. But she's a librarian, which, when you think about it, is kind of the 1960s version of a hacker. So there you go.
No, wait, elaborate. What do you mean?
There is no internet in the 1960s, but if boomer political cartoons from Facebook have taught me anything, is that a smartphone is like the modern book. Father, I can't click book,
Yeah,
uh
yeah,
so when she reads the books and she gathers knowledge about them, that's kind of like hacking.
I see. So natural progression from librarian to where she'd go later, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, you're right.
So Batgirl goes home. Barbara Gordon, I should say, goes home, and she takes the elevator, presumably to meet her date, and she is immediately knocked out by the Penguin while in the elevator because the Penguin is on top of the elevator. I don't know what he's doing there,
They
but
like pull her up with little hook things, like the gag of like pulling a person off stage with the crook.
yeah, the thing that SpongeBob does sometimes, they do that exactly. And the Penguin, which, by the way, amazing performance, just of like this mob guy with his crew of guys with shirts that say henchmen. That it's just amazing, honestly. So Penguin kidnaps Barbara Gordon, and realizing that his date has not showed up, Batman and Commissioner Gordon decide to investigate. They get into Barbara's apartment, and, well, they receive a call. Do you want to explain the call, Lyric?
Yeah, the call. They receive a call, yeah, and Penguin introduces himself. He squawks into the telephone, and something that I was just so charmed by was Gordon being like, "Penguin, it's Penguin." Like he sounds so pleasant as he says it, like, oh, it's our good friend Penguin.
It's a good
Like
friend penguin.
no concern in his voice at all. I'm getting a call from the Penguin.
Yeah, it needs to be said that when we say that the penguin kidnapped Barbara Gordon, we mean that he took her to the apartment just above hers. It like they make a point about mentioning that. I don't quite understand why, but they do that.
Because it's the last place that anyone would ever look is next door.
That's, I mean, yeah, that's pretty clever, I would say. But anyway, Penguin reveals his most devious plan yet, and tells our heroes to look into the Gotham City newspaper that is on Barbara's apartment. And they see that he made a public declaration that he intends to marry Barbara Gordon. And the reason, you see, is because that would make him the son-in-law of the commissioner of police in Gotham City, which I guess we are supposed to incur that will give him special privileges, which I mean, yes, if like the commissioner decided to give you those privileges, but you are a villain. He doesn't like you, and you kidnapped his daughter. So this plan is not gonna work, I don't think. Not to poke holes in the Penguin's plan. I'm sure he's a very busy man, and sometimes not all your plans can be winners. But another little problem with his plan, specifically pertaining to the fact that he has Barbara Gordon just next door, is that he has a cardboard cutout of Commissioner Gordon in the room. And to illustrate his points and be dramatic, which fair, he asks his henchman to shoot him, and no one hears that.
Something I love about that scene is like the angle that they've put it at. Like I think they're trying to do like Dutch angles to be like, oh, it's unsettling, it's scary. So you have this really dramatic angle as where a scene with a henchman wearing a shirt that said henchman, a bowler hat, and we've heard him call his boss Pengy, pulls out a gun and just fucking blasts holes in a cardboard cutout.
hmm I, I feel like we, in the 1 episode and a half at the point of recording this, we already made our distaste for Snyder movies clear, uh, or Zack Snyder as a person. But I would like to say that isn't it something that Batman 1966 has more daring shots than any of Batman v Superman or Justice League or any of the DC movies that are not Snyder movies but really want to be, let's be honest.
You're so right. Go off, bestie.
uh so what happens next?
They try and round up a minister, so they can have him to marry Penguin and Barbara. Just so happens Alfred is having dinner with the Reverend. So when the henchmen come in, Alfred volunteers himself to be captured.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. This puts him right in like the right place to discover Barbara Gordon's secret, which what is Barbara Gordon's secret? She is escaping through the room and we see her come back to her apartment and lo and behold, a wall, a revolving wall in her apartment spins to reveal a red wig and her Batgirl costume.
Yep.
She's already Batgirl. So Batgirl gets all dressed up in her costume and comes right around the time that Batman and Robin arrive because they have a tracker on Alfred at all times and are able to find Penguin's location because he kidnapped Alfred. Fight ensues, and this is where you have like chairs are being smashed. They're obviously doing stage punches, but they're really throwing their whole body into it. A detail that I love is Batgirl, like, there's like some holiday wrapping paper for some reason in the apartment. Batgirl wraps the penguin up in it and then takes a little roll of it and starts bapping him on the head like he's a naughty dog or something. um, she vanishes to, just in time to switch out of her Batgirl costume, try and like get back in the room because Batman and Robin are going to bat pick this lock open, get Alfred out. But Penguin, he comes to after the light bapping on the head, and he's got an ace up his sleeve. His umbrella shoots out sleeping gas and knocks Batman and Robin out. His henchmen all, wake up, uh, and it's time for their getaway plan. So they stuff Batman, Robin, Alfred, and whatever Barbara like. She found like a mannequin or like a life-size doll and dressed it up in the wedding dress as like a decoy. And the henchmen come into the room and put this in the bag, and they stuff them all in the bags and they throw them out into Penguin's getaway vehicle, which is just a purple pickup truck that just has mattresses loaded in the back. So they could throw people from a 3-story drop. They throw all the bagged kidnapping victims in there. All the henchmen jump, and Penguin, he pulls out his umbrella, and I'm thinking, is he gonna Mary Poppins this? Is he gonna float down? It's gonna be amazing. The special effects on this. No, he just jumps and falls at full speed with the umbrella.
Oh, this show is so good.
Batgirl sees that they're getting away and she's on the chase. She gets on her Batgirl cycle in the secret freight elevator and follows them to Penguin's just completely nondescript lair. It's like the walls are just blacked out. I'm looking back at the screen caps we took, and there's like a floor that looks maybe like it's kind of like some marble stone floor, and then just the walls are like just blacked out. We come to Batman and Robin are dangling over a giant cauldron. Uh, this is apparently no less than the 4th time that particular giant cauldron prop has been used. Batgirl jumps in, starts the fight, manages to help Batman and Robin escape. There's again with them just like going for it. They're all bouncing off the walls. Alfred pops off. Penguin goes to get away with Barbara Gordon, the one in the bag, the one that's like a mannequin or a sex doll or whatever.
Oh,
And
no.
Alfred, like it's a life size. It's apparently like human enough that the minions didn't realize it wasn't a real person. I don't know what it is. We never get a good look at it.
I don't like that at all, Penguin.
Alfred puts up his dukes. Just this old man puts up his dukes, starts boxing with a gangster, and he wins.
Yeah, no, honestly, like Alfred was by far the most enjoyable part of this episode, and he was like really enjoyable. I had a really good time watching this episode, but
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Alfred's performer is just—he's honestly amazing.
This Alfred's great. Batgirl makes her escape while Batman and Robin finish up the fight so she can get back into the wedding dress, throw away the mannequin, and stuff herself into a bag. There's this argument she has with Alfred where she begs him to keep her secret, and he agrees. There's this, like Batman frees Barbara from the bag, and she's all like, "Who is this Batgirl? Oh, she sounds like she could really hold her own in a fight." And Alfred is just rolling his eyes. It's a great scene.
I heard Batgirl has an 8-pack.
The episode ends on a completely different note. Dick has his driver's license now, but evidently this was a thing. In the first 2 seasons, most episodes would be 2-parters and have a cliffhanger. By season 3, they started having each episode be its own story, but then like the last 2 minutes was a prologue to next week's episode. So we kind of get that. Not much to say about it. Riddler is there. While I would have loved to watch the entirety of season 3 of this show. I want to keep this mostly to comics, um, even if it means we miss amazing episodes like episode 10, Surf's Up, Joker's Under, in which Batman, Robin, and Batgirl foil the Joker's plot to become the surfing champion of the world. Which honestly, that sounds like a thing I may just want to go back and watch on my own time. I had a lot of fun watching the show. While we don't have time to get into the whole of season 3 of Batman 66, I did some other research around this, found out that the show producers, to try and convince ABC executives to keep Batgirl as a regular on the show, they did a pilot short where Batgirl and Killer Moth fought. I don't believe that that's I think that might be lost media. That was like a thing that was produced but never actually aired on television. Um, but evidently it convinced them. Batgirl, from that point onward, was the first superheroine to appear in an ongoing capacity on television. The woman who played her, Yvonne Craig, I looked into her a bit. She was evidently a ballerina before she was an actress, which she said was really helpful for, again, the stunts that she had to perform herself as Batgirl. Evidently, before coming into the show, she'd heard some lurid stories about West and Ward on set, like them being just kind of bad to work with, drama queens. But according to her, in an interview that I found through an issue of Back Issue, which is not at all a confusing sentence, called "Growing Up Gordon: The Early Years of Batgirl" by Dewey Castle. She said that West and Ward were fine to work with. She was got on pretty well with them. Um, Other interesting information from that article, that interview. Um, Margaret, do you remember the bird?
The bird. No.
The bird in Barbara Gordon's apartment, the parrot.
Oh, right. There was a parrot, wasn't there?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fun. Evidently that wasn't. There was some thought put behind that parrot. And that parrot was Yvonne Craig's personal enemy on the set of Batman.
Oh.
Quote, "That bird was dreadful. They didn't want me looking like a lunatic talking to myself to advance the plot. So instead of me walking around the room muttering, they said, 'We'll give you a bird to talk to.' That would have been fine, except any time you approached his rotten little cage, Charlie would hop to the bottom and you would be talking to an empty perch. After that scene, he would then make horrible squawking noises and ruin all the takes. That parrot drove us mad. One day he flew into the rafters and wouldn't come down. We couldn't shoot because we would be in the middle of a take and he would swoop down. My stand-in liked him and took him home after the show was over. Years later, I did a Fantasy Island, and my stand-in's husband was one of the grips. He told me, 'We still have Charlie the parrot.'" I
Oh.
love that in this interview, she just goes off about that fucking bird.
Adam West and Burt Ward, great colleagues. All the rumors about them, complete bullshit. Now that fucking bird, though.
Fucking bird. Yvonne Craig would go on to continue playing Batgirl, not to the degree that Burt Ward and Adam West would, though. Um, when the TV movie Back to the Batcave was happening, and Burt Ward and Adam West kind of reunited for that, they had asked Yvonne Craig, and she said no. Quote, "I was sent the script and declined. This decision was based purely on my evaluation of the script and had nothing to do, as rumor now has it, with the size of my part. I'm inclined to agree completely with the old adage. There are no small parts, only small actors. I wish them well and hope the finished product manages to be better than what I read." She would reprise the role again, namely for a PSA in 1973, which, Margot, if you'll indulge me, I'd like for us to watch this together.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
A ticking bomb means trouble for Batman and Robin.
Holy, breaking and entering! It's Batgirl!
Quick, Batgirl, untie us before it's too late.
It's already too late. I've worked for you a long time, and I'm paid less than Robin. Same job, same employer means equal pay for men and women.
No time for jokes, Batgirl.
It's no joke. It's the federal equal pay law.
Holy act of Congress!
If you're not getting equal pay, contact the Wage and Hour Division, U.S. Department of Labor.
So,
Fuck yeah.
a fun thing here, I don't know if you noticed it, but that was Yvonne Craig and Burt Ward. That was not Adam West. Dick Gaudier was the actor who played Batman in that PSA, allegedly because Adam West was at the time trying to like distance himself from the Batman role, trying to be like a more serious actor. In sort of remarking on that PSA, Yvonne Craig said that at the time she joked with West that he didn't want to shoot the commercial because he was sexist, which is very funny. But I don't think, like, you know, it was a joke between colleagues, between friends.
Mm-hmm.
So while Batgirl was, you know, conceived and developed for the TV show and was hugely popular on the TV show, Yvonne Craig's performance has become fairly iconic. She actually premiered a couple months before the TV show in 1964 Detective Comics number 327 under writer Gardner Fox and artist Carmine Infantino. She was a hit in both television and comics, and a thing that was particularly special about her as a character was that her stories appealed to both male and female readers. She kind of walked the line of like everyone, like Batgirl, you know? As I said last episode, she kind of blew the old Batgirl and Batwoman out of the water in terms of popularity, and along with other changes Schwartz was making, this had a big impact on sales. The Batman show was coming back. I'd like to walk us through her debut story, the $1 Million debut.
Is she heroine or is she villainous?
We'll have to read to find out.
We may never know.
So, we have a pretty similar start with Barbara Gordon is a librarian. She is just back from college, come back to Gotham City, but this time, rather than going to like the policeman's ball as Bruce Wayne's date, it's a costume party, and she's going as Batgirl. And the thing I love here is her like Princess Leia buns.
I love, fully unironically, love her civilian look. Like the whole like black suit underneath with the red skirt and the yellow boots, which I love it. I think it's very cool.
I also love, well, this Batgirl costume really does things for me.
Yeah?
That's, you know, interpret that how you want. She starts driving to the thing. As she's driving, she's remarking some more exposition for us, the readers, so we know that she made her PhD at Gotham State University. She graduated summa cum laude. She has a brown belt in judo, but the highlight of her life will be going to this policeman's ball costume party and like shocking everyone with her, you know, risque costume, Batgirl.
Ooh.
Batgirl's driving along the road and she recognizes Bruce Wayne's car, who she remarks on as Daddy's millionaire friend, and notes that he's always regarded me as a sort of mousy person. So interesting change is they're not friends. They don't seem to know each other. In fact, there's kind of like a little bit of resentment there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Also, interesting remark to see that at this point Bruce Wayne was a millionaire.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne being a millionaire is very interesting. How that kind of has changed over time. But Bruce is being ambushed by Killer Moth's men, and he has to make a run for it because he can't like change in front of all these people, and thankfully Batgirl gives him like the opportunity to make a run for it in the woods so he can change into his Batman costume, which he feels he needs to do because this new Batgirl might not be as good as she thinks. But, you know, proving Batman wrong, she holds her own, and, you know, takes on Killer Moth's men, you know, does very well in this fight. And as the narration remarks, her eyes sparkle Her breath comes faster. Her heart thumps with alarming speed. Babs Gordon is having the time of her life, fully alive to this new excitement and danger, and loving it.
That girl's horny.
Oh, I was a little surprised to see her referred to as Babs Gordon, because they use that nickname a lot in modern Batgirl, and I had always thought that was like a more modern thing, to try and like downplay how Barbara is kind of an old-fashioned name. But no, they use it here in her very first appearance, so I guess that's been a thing from the start. The narration does actually refer to her as Dr. Barbara Gordon as well, which is another thing I've not seen referred anywhere. And you know what? If you like have a PhD, go for it. I fully plan on asking people to refer to me as Dr. Hartwell once I have my PhD.
Yeah, if I were her, I would even have called my superhero name Dr. Bat.
Dr. Bat, Dr. Batgirl. Um, the next day, Bruce receives a request for ransom money, or not really ransom money, but I guess like a protection racket where Killer Moth is being like, "Pay me $100,000, or else I'm gonna beat the shit out of you." And turns out Killer Moth has been extorting other millionaires, and honestly, kind of based.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna throw it out there. Like, he's not even asking for that much comparatively. He just wants $100,000. Like, go for it, man.
Comrade Killer Moth. He's just like, Batman, I will cause domestic terrorism unless you pay me $100. I'm in a really tough situation. The rent's cutting up with me. I need some money,
Bruce.
man.
Bruce, I need help on rent, please.
Please, Bruce.
Please, Bruce. But, Batman figures this out. He sends Alfred to go drop off the money, which, doesn't that put Alfred in danger? Like,
he's a boxer.
He is a boxer. Two other things with this panel. I really like the art in this issue. The sort of contrast between the really bright colors and then the very dark, heavy shadows. It kind of works here.
Yeah, I do like it as well. You're right.
And also, is Alfred's hair styled like that to be like reminiscent of bat ears? Because that's so silly if it is.
Oh, I think you might be right.
Yeah.
So much for making it more dark and grounded.
No, I think it's great.
No, it's great. I love it.
We cut back to Killer Moth back in Moth Mansion with his henchmen Larva and Pupa.
Oh.
Which, I love Killer Moth. He's not a villain I know much about. I do know he still shows up from time to time, and in fact, the canceled Batgirl movie that was going to come out was going to have Killer Moth as a villain in it. Kind of calling back to her first appearance, which I am gonna be forever mad that movie got canceled.
It got canceled because they want to silence Comrade Killer Moth on his truth about millionaires.
Exactly. Now we're never going to see Killer Moth's version of the Communist Manifesto. Larva and Pupa stake out Bruce Wayne's house for a few days. Meanwhile, Barbara Gordon starts training. Again, I love the fashion here. It's great. The orange suit jacket and Princess Leia buns is fantastic.
God, she's ripped.
I know.
Like, her legs are actually muscular, which is not something that you thought you see in comics from this time. But oh yeah, no, she's ripped, actually strong.
Yeah, and we see, she's repairing the Batgirl costume. She's, physically training. She has a special diet and intensive exercise routine, all the while being like, it's a shame I can't be Batgirl, but just in case though. She finds a rare book that Bruce Wayne has been looking for. So she goes to deliver it, and again, Barbara Gordon has the most insane drip.
Holy shit. I love
Look at
her.
this outfit.
I love her so much. Wow.
The bright blue, yellow, and red look is so good.
Wow.
Her drip is off the charts. Um, Unfortunately, we are left with a cliffhanger of Bruce Wayne has been murdered. And this unexpected development, it shakes Batgirl down to her pretty toes. So, I was thinking like, oh wow, a cliffhanger. Guess we have to go to the next issue of Detective Comics, but no, because the next page is part 2. My guess is maybe that because Detective Comics isn't just like a Batman story, it's several different stories that fall under the Detective Comics brand. At this time, Elongated Man had a slot in Detective Comics, presumably because of his civilian identity as a PI.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they split this into a part 1 and part 2, even though they're like one right after another, to just demarcate that like, okay, this is 2 slots because this is a special story. What I love here though about this opening is an explanation for the outfit, right? She had the beret and she rolls it down and it's the cowl, and her skirt, she takes it off and it's the cape, and then she rolls up her boots and they're still yellow boots, but now they have just a bat logo on them. And that's better. I really love this like reversible clothing transformation sequence. It's very fun.
Yeah, it's very fun. I do need to comment on this though, is that like I don't know, you tell me if I'm just reading too much into it, but you look at this poses and the motion that she's meant to be doing. Doesn't it look like, oh, they're doing Batgirl undressing, but she's not taking any clothes off?
I guess.
Kind of like, this the style of pinup stuff that it wasn't uncommon in comics, but and
Yeah.
also not very stealth a lot of the time, but
Like they do, yeah, like it's kind of like poses for if she was undressing, but she's in fact putting more clothes on.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm rolling my boots up, and instead of, like rolling my stockings down. But like while drawn, it looks like the same motion pretty much.
So she bursts in, and the real Batgirl makes her first appearance, which, shaking my head, the utter disrespect to Betty Kane.
How many bat-shaped paper cuts did this Batgirl made, honestly?
Exactly. She may have a PhD, but she didn't think to cut carbon paper into the shape of little bats.
Mm-hmm.
She goes in, starts bonking their heads together. I bet that's not the first time you've fallen for a woman. Which, honestly, banger pun. Robin clearly is just jealous, saying that she makes terrible puns. But, turns out she's actually thrown the whole plan off. Batman is close personal friends with Bruce Wayne. This is, a dummy. They came with a plan, and they were gonna follow the Moth Brigade back to Moth Mansion, and she's ruined everything. Dick Grayson here, just being like a total, living up to his namesake, just being such a dick, like touching her face, being like, "Aw, cheer up, Batgirl." Especially because he's like a child and she's a fully grown adult here still.
I was gonna say, I forgot that he was a child for a second. I was like, why is he so short? And then, oh yeah,
he's just a small male.
Because yeah, it's just a short king. We love to stand a short king.
They go follow the tracker that was placed on the Moth limousine.
The Mothmobile.
Which looks great. Batgirl hops on her bat bike, which honestly kind of looks more like a bat scooter here.
Yeah, but the bat scooter doesn't have, the same ring to it.
Batgirl, as the narration refers to her, dominoed dare doll, follows Batman and Robin in. Bats and Robin have gotten caught in a zero gravity chamber that Killer Moth has. So Baps, using some sharp thinking, takes the magnetic tracker that Robin stuck on the Mothmobile to make her boots magnetic so she'll stick to the floor. So she's able to like pull Batman and Robin back down. Um,
Oh.
uh, Another demonstration of her smarts as Killer Moth is hiding in the manor, Baps is able to track him down because when they fought at Wayne Manor, some of her perfume got on him. So she's able to sniff him out.
Okay.
Which it leads to a really funny scene of her just walking around Moth Manor, like sniffing the air, and Robin's like, "What the fuck is she doing?"
Barbara Gordon's a weird woman.
I love her. She's great. By the end of the issue, Batman fully welcomes Batgirl onto the team. She's proven herself, and from now on, Batgirl is officially a part of the Bat team. Also ends on this great panel with James Gordon. That Batgirl sure is tops in my book. Harumph. Too bad you couldn't be a little more like her, Babs. If Dad only knew. Ah, the end.
Uh, I, mm, okay, so, you know, it needs to be said, Commissioner Gordon is a bad policeman, and I don't mean it in the ACAB way. I mean it in the like this new lady shows up committing vigilante justice, and you're like, damn, daughter, why can't you be more like her?
You should go out and be a vigilante. That may make him a bad policeman, but if anything, I think that it's one of the things where I'm like, ACAB, obviously, but I have my weaknesses for fictional characters, Dale Cooper and James Gordon, characters like that. And I think part of the fact that he's just so willing to be like, yeah, I'm gonna work with Batman instead of, any of my subordinates. It maybe speaks to something about the trust he places in police versus a guy in a bat costume.
Yeah, especially because they, are going to play into the semi-accidental factor of, Gotham City being a very dangerous city. The Arkham games do that, and a lot of the movies do that, even like the Burton movies,
Hmm.
showing that like Gotham is a very dangerous and corrupt city, right? There is so the police too is corrupt. Good thing, only in fiction, am I right? Uh, and so Commissioner Gordon being put as this figure of like, I trust Batman more than I trust the police is supposed to put him as the figure that is sort of an archetype or trope or whatever you want to call it of the one not dirty cop.
Yeah. Overall, I think this is a really good first story for Barbara Gordon, honestly. I
Yeah,
actually really enjoyed this issue.
yeah.
Killer Moth is a fun villain. I love she has drip. I love her personality here. It's really great actually.
Yeah, I mean, I did have fun with Betty Kane, but I I was not laughing with Betty Kane. I was laughing at her. But this was actually like really enjoyable. As you said, like her personality is very cool. You can see the tonal difference between like the show, which is very camp and very goofy, and the comic, which is trying to be a little more serious. Is still like not Vertigo, obviously, but like Barbara feels like a character, whereas Betty Kane more so just felt like Robin but girl. I joke that
Yeah.
Batgirl is Batman but girl, but not really. She's more like Robin but girl and with way less charisma.
I think it's good here. You can see the kind of like, oh, I'm usually seen as the mousy librarian, but I'm going to prove them wrong, and also like very self-confident still. It's not a I'm going to prove them wrong because I feel I have something to prove. It's I'm going to prove them wrong because it's fun.
There's also like a little bit of a Miss Marvel Kamala Khan flavor to this because like she is Batgirl because of a costume party because presumably she's a fan of Batman.
Mhm.
And then she's like, ah, but I will fight crime with this. That's just fun. I like when like new superheroes are fans of superheroes.
Yeah, that's very fun. This story, as I said, was very well received. Batgirl was hugely popular, and from then on, she would be a regular star in Detective Comics, usually alternating like backup slots with Robin, until eventually she got that slot all to herself. So next time, I'm kind of like, we can explore more. What did they do with her after her introduction? Those sort of backup stories when she appeared in the main Batman series and all that stuff. So, fuck, still not good at outros.
Holy outros, Lyric.
Holy outro, Marco. Uh, we will catch you in the next issue of Bubblespeech. If you want to follow us elsewhere in the meanwhile, I am at Lyric Hartwell on Twitter and Tumblr. You can follow me there to see some of my writing.
You can find me at Chthonic on both Tumblr and Twitter, and still ain't good at outros. We should make this like a running bit.
No, I do think we should probably find an outro thing, like a thing to do.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time on Bubblespeech. How's that?